The sea has been my home for most of my life. I've fished these waters since I was a boy, long before my hair turned gray and my hands became rough and tired. I know every sound the ocean makes, the way it sighs in the early hours, the way it hums when the wind brushes across it, the quiet rhythm that always felt like a heartbeat beneath my boat. That morning, the sky was soft and pale, the kind of autumn morning when the air smells faintly of salt and pine. I had woken before sunrise, as I always do. I packed my tackle box, my old thermos of coffee, and set off in my small wooden boat. The sea was calm, almost glass-like, stretching out in shades of silver and blue. There's a special peace in those early hours. The town was still asleep. Only the distant call of gulls and the soft splash of the oars filled the silence. At 60, I don't fish as much for the catch anymore. It's more about the stillness, the company of the sea itself. Out there, you can hear your own thoughts, and sometimes you remember what it means to feel alive. I had been out for about an hour when I noticed something odd floating far ahead. At first, I thought it was driftwood, or an empty container washed ashore by last night's tide. But something about it caught my eye, a slow movement, a strange wobble on the water's surface. I lifted my old binoculars and squinted toward it, but even then I couldn't quite tell what it was. Curiosity got the better of me. I started the small motor and guided the boat closer. The waves were gentle, but as I neared, a chill crawled down my spine. Inside a large plastic barrel, the kind used to store chemicals or water, something was moving. When I got close enough, I could hear faint scratching. Then, a sound I'll never forget, a weak, broken meow. My heart stopped for a moment. I dropped the binoculars and reached over, pulling the barrel closer with my boat hook. "Good Lord," I whispered. My throat tightened. The poor thing was trapped inside that barrel like someone had done it on purpose. Her little paws were trembling, her eyes half closed. She was gasping for air. I didn't think, I just acted. I grabbed the small saw I keep on board for cutting tangled nets. My hands shook as I pressed the blade against the plastic. The sound of the saw cutting through the barrel mixed with the kitten's faint cries. I was terrified I might be too late. When the plastic finally gave way, I reached in and lifted her out. She was ice cold and barely moving. Her tiny chest rose and fell so lightly I could hardly tell if she was breathing. I held her close to my chest, wrapping her in an old piece of cloth I used to clean fish. "There, there, little one," I whispered, my voice trembling. "You're safe now. I got you." Her head rested weakly against my arm, her eyes half open, as if she couldn't understand what had happened. I looked around at the endless stretch of water, feeling both angry and heartbroken. Someone had put her in that barrel. Someone had tried to end her tiny life in the cruelest way imaginable. For a long moment, I just sat there in silence, holding her close, feeling the faint warmth return into her body. The sun had climbed higher now, and its light fell gently on her wet fur. I turned the boat around and headed back toward shore as fast as I could. The waves splashed against the bow, and all I could think about was keeping her alive. I kept one hand on the wheel and the other around her small body, whispering words I didn't even know I remembered, soft, comforting things, like I used to say to my kids when they were small. By the time I reached the dock, my heart was racing. I ran across the pier, clutching her in my arms, shouting for help. The local veterinary clinic was only a few streets away. I must have looked like a madman, an old fisherman, soaking wet, carrying a trembling kitten wrapped in rags. The young woman at the clinic took her from me right away. They laid her on a soft towel, checking her breathing, her pulse. I waited outside the examination room, pacing like a man waiting for news of his own child. After what felt like an eternity, the vet came out. She smiled gently. "She's weak, but she's alive. You got her here just in time." I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. My eyes stung. For the next few days, I visited the clinic every morning. They told me she was responding well, that she was eating again, that her breathing had improved. Every time I saw her, she looked a little stronger. She'd blink up at me from her small blanket and her tail would twitch just slightly. One morning, the vet said she was ready to go home if I wanted her. I looked at that tiny gray and white kitten sitting in her cage, her eyes bright now, and I knew there was no question. Of course I want her. I said, "She's already family." Bringing her home felt strange at first. My house had been quiet for years, too quiet. My wife had passed long ago, and my kids had moved to different cities. But now the sound of little paws on the floor, the soft meows in the morning, brought something back into my life I didn't realize I'd lost. I named her Minnow, small, quick, full of life. Every morning after that, she'd hop onto the edge of my boat, watching me as I prepared my nets. I'd laugh and tell her she couldn't come out to sea with me, but sometimes, when the water was calm, I'd let her sit beside me for a while. She'd stare out at the waves like she remembered something, maybe the day she almost didn't make it. She became my shadow, my company in the long, quiet days. People in town would smile when they saw the old fisherman and his cat walking together by the docks. Some of them had heard the story, and they'd nod with a kind of respect, not for me, but for what that little cat had survived. Sometimes late at night, I'd sit on the porch with her curled up in my lap. The sea would whisper in the distance, and I'd think how close she came to dying, and how by saving her, I'd somehow saved a part of myself too. I never found out who put her in that barrel. Maybe it doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that she lived, and that in her tiny heartbeat there's proof that kindness can still exist, even in a world that can be cruel. She's older now, just like me. She's not the scared little kitten I pulled from the sea that morning. She's strong, curious, and always near. Sometimes when I look at her sitting by the window, watching the gulls, I realize something. You don't have to change the world to make a difference. Sometimes it's enough to save one small life and let it remind you that your own still has meaning. Compassion doesn't ask for anything in return. It just asks that you don't look away.